Right. Ready? 5. On 5, yeah? Okay, go. All right.
The world is moving forward. This phase of suffering will soon pass us by. Let us pause and reflect on the human condition. Many problems facing the world today are the result of unsustainable choices. We need not continue this destructive cycle. We can change ourselves. We can change the world. The time is now to usher in a renaissance. Compassion, ecological healing, sustainable growth, inclusive development. Islamic finance is one of the most valuable tools we can use to secure the world's future. INCEIF brings Islamic finance to the world. INCEIF instills knowledge conscientiously. We forge leaders to build a better future for all. Be the change the world needs with INCEIF.
Assalamu alaikum, good evening, good day, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, students, alumni, and also for those of you joining us via INCEIF's social media. Welcome to our virtual panel discussion on sustainable and inclusive recovery, charting a new reality. My name is Mohamed Suratmin, and I'm very honored to take you through today's exciting discussion as we are joined by the powerful minds of our Professor of Practice with first-hand knowledge, experience, and insights from the industry, our esteemed faculty members, our alumnus, and our first cohort of MBA Sustainable Business students. We begin today's event with welcoming remark by INCEIF's President and CEO, Professor Dr. Azmi Omar. Prof. Azmi, your floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Iftitah. Yang berbahagia Tan Sri Abdul Wahid Omar, Chairman of Bursa Malaysia, as well as Professor of Practice INCEIF, Professor AAhad Osman-Gani, the Professor of Leadership and Management at INCEIF, our alumnus, Dr. Liza Mydin, Head Corporate Strategy, Maybank Islamic, our moderator, Associate Professor Dr. Eskandar, Shah, Mohamed Rasid, the Associate Dean for the School of Graduate and Professional Studies, INCEIF. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. As usual, let me begin by thanking our panel members, as well as all of you, for joining our panel discussion this afternoon. The topic is on sustainable and inclusive recovery, charting a new reality. As all of us are aware, Malaysia and many other countries are still in the midst of COVID-19 pandemic. In Malaysia, as of yesterday, we have a total of 60,000 or close to 61,000 individuals infected by COVID-19, with close to 49,000 individuals who are cured and 348 deaths. In other countries, of course, the figure is much more, both in terms of number of individuals infected as well as death. And we have also seen that a number of countries, including China, US, Europe, have announced the development or the availability of vaccine, COVID-19 vaccine, sometime to be available sometime next year. But again, if you look further, countries such as developing countries may not get that vaccine, maybe third quarter of next year. So in my analysis, a couple of lessons that we can learn. One is the importance of maintaining a sustainable world, where keeping our environment protected from degradations as well as destruction. COVID-19, as you may be aware, came from a bad virus, which normally would not jump into human unless the habitat is destroyed. If we also look at further the importance of safety and health. So apart from maintaining our environment to be well protected so that it will not be destroyed, the second lesson that we can learn is from safety and health. Government introduced lockdowns and social distancing in order for populations not to get infected due to close interaction as well as health reasons. So because of this, many people, including in Malaysia, the use of digital applications becoming very important. And of course, banks, fintech companies are promoting and encouraging individuals in Malaysia to use digital applications. And the third lesson we can learn from this is that the importance of livelihood. Once we want to have a lockdown, we want to protect people not to be infected by COVID-19, we are also concerned about the livelihood of individuals. People need to go out to work. They need to go out and work to earn a livelihood. Families need to earn income. So in this particular context, there must be a balance between the lives and the livelihood. Protecting the safety of the people, the health of the people, but at the same time, ensuring the economic livelihood continues as before. So in this particular regard, INCEIF is concerned about the impact of environment, the issue of protecting health, safety, the issue of creating livelihood and continue the livelihood of individuals. So in this regard, we discussed sometime, in fact, almost 2 years ago, having a program on sustainability, because we believe, as I mentioned earlier on, sustainable environment, sustainable future is the way to go. We need to have a world where our environment, our world is promoted and created through a sustainable manner. So in this regard, we have two programs that we are going to launch. The first program that we are going to launch is our industrial PhD in Islamic finance, which offers a unique curricula combining both the practical as well as the academic research, because we know that today you need to have both components. You need to have a strong academic rigor as well as a strong practical application rigor. So it's a combination of both. So the program that we're launching today is a combination of both theory and practice. So the idea is to provide senior professionals with knowledge, competencies, and skills to create business impact and ensure there is a value creation through their scientific research. And researchers who undertake this program will undertake real-world research that are identified by industry players so that the research is practical, it can be implemented by the industry after the completion of the studies. The second program that we are launching is MBA Sustainable Business. As I mentioned earlier on, Islamic finance is a very important component, and environment, protecting sustainability, environment is very important. Because in Islam, if you read in the Quran, in the Hadith, it talks about protecting the environment. Even a very simple example, you may know when you perform Hajj, you cannot even break a branch of a tree, during Hajj. And it's a very important component of Hajj. You do not do that. So just imagine a very simple thing. During Hajj, you cannot even break a branch of a tree. So that shows how important the environment is in the context of Islam. So in this particular case, we are offering a new program that focuses on environment, sustainable business. We want to ensure that whatever economic activities that we do, we take into account all the Sharia principles, the negative screening as well as the positive screening as well, making sure that sustainable component of the business is being incorporated as part and parcel of the business activities of firms. So in this program, students will learn all this knowledge from our practitioners, as well as our professor of practice, as well as from our faculty members. So before I end, let me say to all of you is that it is very important for us to move forward to incorporate Islamic finance that is based on value, what we call in Malaysia the value-based intermediation. Islamic finance where it incorporates the concept of profit as well as planet, as well as the component of people, individuals. We want to bring people to prosper, but at the same time, while we are prospering, we want to protect the environment. We want to have a good, prosperous society. Thank you very much. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Azmi, President and CEO of INCEIF. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who are just tuned in, we are now starting the panel discussion very, very soon. But before we do that, we would like to present a video playback of our new program, MBA Sustainable Business, and celebrate our first cohort of this MBA for this 2020. And this should mark this momentous beginning for the journey of knowledge in Islamic finance and sustainable business.
The world never stands still. Neither does Islamic finance. It is up to us to upgrade ourselves to face new challenges or risk getting left behind. Everywhere we look, the digital edge is there. From the boardroom to the streets, it's more essential than ever to learn to adapt, to make sure our skills are always current and relevant. This new MBA program does that for everyone who applies, regardless of race and faith. Together, we can make a positive impact on the whole industry, creating practices that can be performed on a global scale. INCEIF champions the idea of learning and the importance of sustainable growth. Be at the forefront as a self-starter, a new type of leader. Enroll in our MBA program today. Learn from the experts in Islamic finance and conventional finance. Evolve to become a game changer and change the industry for the better. Through key areas, you'll learn not just about new topics, but about qualities that can change the world as well. We have always held the belief that there is a leader in every learner. So let's learn and take the first step to innovate. Accept new problems as challenges that can be solved with new solutions. Face everything, trends and uncertainties, head on in order to become the leaders of the evolving future. Live chat with us at www.inceif.org.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen, from Malaysia, Indonesia, Bangladesh, all the way to Silicon Valley. Now, we have with us in studio for the panel discussion on sustainable and inclusive recovery, charting a new reality, is the moderator himself. Let me introduce, and with my pleasure, Associate Professor Dr. Eskandar Mohamed Rasid, and he is the Associate Dean of the School of Graduates and Professional Studies at INCEIF. Now, besides that, he is also the Financial Sector Specialist Consultant at World Bank Group. Without further ado, Dr. Eskandar, the floor is yours. How are you?
I'm all right, Effie.
All right.
Thank you so much. It's a good Friday. It's a blessed Friday.
Inshallah, yes.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, thank you so much, Effie, for a good introductions. And also thank you so much, Dr. Azmi, as well, for his welcoming remarks. I think whatever that he said just now set the tone for today's discussions. We are probably living in the unprecedented world We are probably seeing a world which is very volatile, exposed to quite a number of crises. And this latest pandemic is just signify how important it is to discuss about the sustainable agenda. So you can probably say that INCEIF is trying to expand its horizon, not just focusing on Islamic finance, and trying to bring Islamic finance to much more broader scope by introducing this MBA program and also this industry PhD. So today we are very honored because these sessions we are blessed with three eminent speakers covering broad spectrum of vast experience, among them many years, and we are quite lucky to have first of all Yang Bahagia Tan Sri Abdul Wahid Omar, Chairman of Bursa Malaysia as well as we are very honored as well because recently he agreed to join INCEIF faculty as a professor of practice. So we are very honored to have Tan Sri, and with Tan Sri also we will have Professor Dr. Ahad, our very own professor in leadership and management. And last but not least, we are very happy that our own alumnus, Dr. Liza Mydin, who's currently the head of corporate strategy, Maybank Islamic. So these three people obviously doesn't really require much introductions, but I'll still try to do justice for their presence here. Tan Sri, Prof, and Dr. Liza, again, it's a pleasure. It's good to have you in this on this blessed Friday and talk about this very important topic, sustainable and inclusive recovery, charting a new reality. I mean, the topic itself is basically bring a new dimension, and for us to really rethink about our, economic policy, our education space, and the way to move forward. And that's what we are exactly going to discuss here. So before I start, I just going to tell you that this roundtable will have two rounds, two sessions. The first one is more like a sharing sessions where our speakers will basically talking about their experience, their aspirations, so on and so forth. And then the second round, we're basically going to connect to the theme of the sessions. The questions will be very much focused to the theme. And then last but not least, we also give the opportunity to our participant to ask questions to our eminent speakers. So let me start with Tan Sri Abdul Wahid Omar. Okay, Tan Sri, let me just quickly introduce you before I pass the floor to you. Tan Sri is currently the chairman of Bursa Malaysia. And as I said just now, Tan Sri recently joined INCEIF as a professor of practice. He doesn't really require much introductions. I think his career started with UM Renong, Telekom Malaysia, and then many years with Maybank. Which really attracted me the most, which the slogan of humanizing, financial services, which really remain one of the tagline for Maybank as well. And then later, Tan Sri also spent quite a number of years with the government as a minister, and then chairman of PNB, and now as a chairman of Bursa. So Tan Sri, with this vast experience, Tan Sri, in the corporate world, and then you also attached to INCEIF and UKM and also Oxford Center as well. So Tan Sri, maybe in the first half of your presentation or your sharing session, how do you see the relevancy of sustainability agenda, both at the macro and also micro level, Tan Sri?
Well, thank you, Dr. Eskandar. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon. Let me begin by thanking you, Dr. Eskandar, and the team at INCEIF for inviting me to be on this panel. So perhaps I can answer you by relating to you my own personal journey. And I think perhaps we can have some lessons learned from there. I must say that I've indeed been very fortunate to have served the private sector, the public sector, government-linked companies, and a government-linked investment company over the past 33 years. Now, as an accountant, I have been a beneficiary of the inclusive new economic policy. And my ambition then was to be a chief financial officer of a major public listed company. Alhamdulillah, I got that when I was appointed as the chief financial officer of Telekom Malaysia Berhad back in March 2001. And I never imagined to be given the opportunity to be the CEO of not one, but three major organizations, and later to serve in the cabinet and came back to be the group chairman of PNB. Now, people will then ask, how was that possible? Well, it was possible because way back in 1971, the government then introduced the new economic policy, which was aimed at eradicating poverty for all nations, irrespective of race, and eliminating identification of race by economic function and geographical location. Now, one of the most effective ways to take a family out of poverty is by giving their children good education. And in my case, coming from a poor family, I was given the opportunity to go to MRSM Seremban, a boarding school with dedicated teachers and very conducive learning environment, and then later given scholarship to UK to pursue professional accountancy program. And this inclusive policy worked well for people like me and hundreds of thousands of others who were given similar opportunity, if not millions. And beyond that policy, there were also other sustainable policy measures, such as reducing dependency on commodities from an economic perspective, expanding the contribution of manufacturing and services sector to the economy, where the economic base was very much diversified. Then this was followed by the Vision 2020, where in 1991, the fourth Prime Minister then, Tun Mahathir, launched that vision, aimed for Malaysia to achieve self-sufficient industrialized nation status, encompassing all aspects of life, including economic prosperity, social well-being, and world-class education. Then in 2010, the government introduced the new economic model, 2010-2020. So this is basically supposed to be the last leg of Vision 2020, aimed at Malaysia achieving an advanced nation or developed nation status in an inclusive and sustainable manner. Now, when we talk about sustainable, not just in the way we treat the environment, but also in the way we manage our finances, in terms of fiscal consolidation and so on. And the latest, I would say, was the launch of the Shared Prosperity Vision, again by the 7th Prime Minister. This would cover the period 2020 until 2030, which is also embraced by our current Prime Minister. And the objective here is to make Malaysia a nation that achieves sustainable growth, along with fair and equitable distribution across income groups, across ethnicities, across regions, whether it's Peninsula or Sabah and Sarawak, as well as across supply chains. So you'll notice, Dr. Eskandar, that at the macro level, the aspiration has always been the same, and that is to achieve economic prosperity, which is in an inclusive and sustainable manner. Of course, we will know that the degree of success has varied significantly. So, for example, in 2019, Malaysia achieved a gross national income per capita of only $11,200, and that's 9.5% short of the target of an advanced nation. So based on the World Bank computation, the threshold for an advanced economy is $12,376. So we are 9.5% short of that target with 1 year to go, because it's meant to be in 2020. And then COVID came. So obviously this affected the lives of 1.4 million people in terms of deaths, from 16 million cases globally. And of course also affecting livelihood, with some 1.6 billion people in the informal sector being grossly impacted. And of course, we've seen how this COVID-19 has impacted the global economy, with GDP growth for 2020 expected to contract by 4%. And that's with the benefit of China growing to some extent. but in Malaysia, obviously, is affected badly. So you've seen in the first half or rather in the second quarter, where our GDP contracted by 17.1%. And Alhamdulillah, in the third quarter, with the reopening of the economy, it contracted by a smaller margin, by only 2.7%. But I'm afraid in the fourth quarter, with the CMCO being back in place, I think the contraction will be wider. And therefore, so for people like us and others, so many of us are expecting the GDP contraction for Malaysia to be at the upper end of Bank Negara's range of 3.5% to 5.5%. So I guess in the case of Maybank Kim Eng, the forecast is 5.4% contraction. How do you stage an inclusive and sustainable recovery post-COVID-19? Well, I would say that at the macro level, I would urge every single one of us, every single nation, to embrace fully the spirit and intention of the shared prosperity vision. And again, that's to achieve sustainable growth, along with fair and equitable distribution across income groups, ethnicities, regions, and supply chains. And of course, with greater emphasis on sustainability, because we've seen how if we don't look after our environment and so on, we will have problems that we've never seen before. For example, we're talking about the climate change. We don't contain our increase in temperature globally within that 1.5 degrees centigrade to 2 degrees centigrade by 2050. I think probably half of Klang Valley, the whole of Klang, will be underwater, if like. And 2050, sometimes we think like, wow, it's so long way, we can make adjustments. But 30 years actually not very long. If you remember when Tun Mahathir announced that Vision 2020, that was 29 years ago. And we're already here, 2020, right? So I can assure you that 30 years is actually not too long. So I guess there must be that greater emphasis and effort that all of us will have to put in to overcome this impact of climate change. Now, that's overall at the macro level. At the micro level, I would encourage for all of us to fully adapt to the new normal in embracing e-commerce, online applications. We also need to ramp up our broadband network infrastructure. And I'm happy that in the budget 2021, the government has allocated that 7.4 billion ringgit Jendela project that will see the deployment of the 4G network to cover 97% of population over the next 2 years. We need to embed sustainability practices in all development projects to make Malaysia a sustainability first nation. Now, this is great because in budget 2021, the Minister of Finance, Dr. Sri Tengku Zafrul, announced that we are going to make Malaysia a sustainable finance hub, and starting with the first sustainability bond in Malaysia to fund the various environmental and social initiatives. So I think that, to me, that's something that which is great that's being embraced by the country. Back to my own personal position, if I may, Dr. Eskandar. Following my retirement in 2018, I always wanted to contribute more in the area of education and conservation. So indeed, I'm truly honored to be appointed as chairman of UKM since November 2018. I also signed up as a visiting fellow at the Oxford Center for Islamic Studies since September 2019. And now thank you to INCEIF for allowing me to contribute as your professor of practice. So many of you may not have known that I've also joined the board of trustees of WWF Malaysia in March last year as part of my intention to contribute in the area of conservation and sustainability. And I guess if all of us were to do our small part respectively, so when you combine our collective efforts, I think inshallah, God willing, we will progress towards truly an inclusive and sustainable nation or economy, if you like. So perhaps let me stop here. Thank you.
Actually, thank you so much. I mean, it's always fascinating to hear your thoughts. But before I let you go for the first round, Tan Sri, I just want to, you say you were very privileged to be heading so many government-linked companies and also corporate, big, I would say big firms in Malaysia. So do you think, Tan Sri, now our corporate sectors are responding well with the sustainability agenda? So do you think that the Malaysian corporate sector has to do more, Tan Sri, on pushing the sustainability agenda?
Well, I think certainly, I think there's a lot more that I think they can do. And I think in the past, I think we've seen how there's been a lot of focus on bottom line. But that was actually without sacrificing the need for society. So I think if you remember in the past, we have this concept of the 4 quadrants of corporate sustainability. Is about the workplace, the marketplace, the community, and the environment, where a good, responsible corporate citizen will have to cover all these 4 quadrants. And I think in general, they have done that. But I think one area which perhaps that needs further ramping up will be in the broader context of sustainability, and not as a CSR or corporate responsibility per se, but it's a way of doing business, if you like. Because I think if we don't look at our business in a sustainable manner, literally it will not be sustainable, because your customer base can be gone. If you don't look after your environment, for example, say in the case of a plantation, no one's going to buy your oil palm or palm oil products. If you don't look after your labor, definitely no one's going to buy your product and so on. So I think as we move forward, corporates will have to bring the sustainability agenda to the center as a centerpiece.
Oh, thank you so much, Tan Sri. I know it's always a pleasure to have a discussion with you, and I'm sure our students will look forward whenever you take some of our classes as well. Thank you, Tan Sri. So that's from Tan Sri. Let me go to our second panelist. We are very happy also to introduce our latest addition to INCEIF family, Professor AAhad. We are very fortunate, in fact, because he decided to join us. So let me just briefly introduce Prof. AAhad. Prof. AAhad actually been in academia for many years. I think probably about 35 years. He's been in academia upon his completion of his PhD in Ohio State University. And then he was in Singapore for many years with Nanyang Technology University. And then recently he decided to be part of a Malaysian ecosystem. So he joined UIA for quite a number of years before decided to join our INCEIF family. Prof. AAhad, not just a well-known lecturer, he always told me that, one of the biggest achievements that he has had in his life is that he managed to publish his article in one of the top journals in leadership and also human resource. He's also well-known as a consultant to many parts of the world, in Japan, in Indonesia, and in USA as well. So that's a brief introduction of Prof. AAhad, and I'm sure you're probably going to see Prof. AAhad in actions in the classroom as well. So Prof. AAhad, so now let me move to you. So I just want to ask you these questions. So a lot of discussion that happening right now about this MBA program. Some even are questioning the relevancy of MBA program, whether the program is making impact to not just to the corporate world, but the community at large. So how do you see this, not just about the impact of MBA, but the dynamics of MBA educations? And do you think that, for example, this idea of INCEIF of coming out with MBA in sustainable business would probably become, for example, a turning point in terms of the new economic agenda of sustainable and inclusive? Prof. AAhad, over to you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Eskandar. for the brief introduction. Well, I have been with the MBA program for a long time in different countries, in US, in Singapore, in Malaysia for the last several years, in trying to see the design of MBA program and also structuring the MBA to be more contemporary with the changing business world, as well as delivering the program, pitching the program appropriately to the needs of the students. And students' expectation needs are also changing continuously. The impact of MBA education has been always an issue, and recently we are seeing in various news media that MBA become irrelevant, and there are many factors why some of the journalists are talking about it. Because MBA, when it started early 90s, the first MBA, obviously, as you know, by Harvard Business School in 1908. From that time on, it caught attention of the corporate sector and the business world as well, when it gained prominence in the education sector more than sometime in medical and engineering education. And we saw that students, brilliant students or talented students are signing up for MBA programs. And the expectation was different from the MBA students. And what we see, the impact of MBA students that made over the years, that we prepare the students in such a way to see the picture from broader perspective and from an integrated perspective. And when the students are admitted to the MBA program, we try to see whether the students have a unique kind of interest of developing themselves, also contributing to the field of economy as well as to society. Looking the problem from a holistic, integrated perspective is an art for MBA education, which is different than other master's program that we see around in different fields of studies. The other thing that we see, the MBA education, is the professional and social networking. Why people come for MBA education? Not only to learn new development in the fields for studies, but also develop professional networking for which will help them for their career development as well. And we have seen that over and over in many business schools, especially in reputed business schools, that made a difference after completing their MBA program. And also, we also try to see the MBA students should have an adventurous mind to cut across the disciplines. That's what we see globally, in fact. The MBA students' background are multidisciplinary. In fact, I had in my MBA group in Singapore, medical doctor, a professor of engineering signing up for MBA. So that kind of thing. And globally, more than 60% of MBA students came from science background. So that quantitative aspects of MBA education, that made a big difference compared to other business education backgrounds. And when finance education came in, especially Islamic finance, MBA will play, I think, a very significant role in that area, because there are not many MBA programs which focus on Islamic finance or Islamic banking and finance in that industry. So in short, I should say the impact that MBA education make is not only making broad strategic decisions for the company, also industry-relevant, practice-oriented decision. Because one of the main features of MBA teaching programs are to provide education so that they can be applied right away in the industry. And the cohorts who are signing up from the MBA program, when they come from different disciplines, different background, their contribution in the class. Because if you want to make class more interactive, which you always try to do, then everybody brings their own perspective based on their experience. That becomes a learning tool as a collective device for all the students, all the program. And that is a big resource that we see in the MBA education on the world. Now, Dr. Eskandar asked the question about the sustainability education and why the INCEIF has to come with an MBA with a sustainability agenda. When I looked at it, I tried to see overall and globally, there are, I think I counted, there are about 18 programs globally that offer MBA in sustainable development, not sustainable in business. if I want to say. But interestingly, none of them are AACSB accredited. I think there is an advantage that INCEIF had. Most of the MBA specialization in sustainable development. So, but we are not talking about sustainability development only. We are looking at the sustainability in business. So sustainability from the ecological perspective, environmental perspective could be one. But on the other hand, if we look the sustainability of the business in terms of the continuance and taking competitive advantage in the industry for their survival and growth, that we teach in competitive advantage theories, that should be another feature in sustainability. Beside the other issues, like for example, we have a concept called triple bottom line, profit, planet, people. Focusing on these three areas, then people issue is becoming more and more important these days. That means how we can make MBA program which can meet the requirement of people's happiness, for example. Also contribution to the society. That social business is an important issue, and I think INCEIF program has that feature. So focusing on social business, focusing on environmental feature, like for example, renewable resource management is one of the features that are continuously being focused. Recycling industry management, there is another issue that we are looking at right now. And obviously, effect of business on climatic changes, that is becoming one and more important agenda of MBA and business education as well. On the other hand, in the business, diversification of business, whether in the related field or unrelated field, it becomes an important area. Business diversification and gaining competitive advantage through diversification. The other aspect that we have seen, one of the major areas is globalization and cross-cultural sensitivity and working with people from different social cultural environment. That is another issue that we have seen that is coming up in more and more in MBA education. One of the other areas which I'm working on right now for the last several years after coming to Malaysia, that new research agenda on spirituality and spiritual intelligence issue. This is not only dealing with ethical violation issue, which we see in the corporate sector for the last several years, although business schools have been teaching business ethics course for many, many years, and we have been seeing the ethical values have been compromised by the top management. So we are trying to see the research that is done on meaning of work, for example. There was a study done a long time back on meaning of work in 12 different countries. And then there was a study done in 8 different countries. But what people see, do people come to work only for making money or something else? That meaning of work study, that is also comes for inner satisfaction of people. And that we are calling the element of spirituality here as well. Now we like to see when we talk about spirituality is totally different from the religiosity. Okay, they're two different constructs. So these are the issues which can be integrated from sustainability issues because these are all related to sustainability of business issue. Okay, let me stop here, and if there are other issues, maybe inshallah I'll talk about that.
Prof, thank you so much. I think you were able to sum it up, basically by answering my questions that MBA is still relevant, but it has to go through a certain changes, which is trying to make it more impactful to the challenges that we are actually facing today. And also you talk about some of the important elements, not forgetting ethical and also spiritual elements as well, on the top of what Tan Sri has covered on the people, planet, and also profit, bottom line. So Prof, again, it's a pleasure. I'll come back to you in the second round. But let me move to our very own, our product. We are so proud of Dr. Liza achievement. Quick introduction of Dr. Liza. Currently, she's head of corporate strategy at Maybank Islamic. As I said, Dr. Liza graduated with PhD in Islamic finance from INCEIF. We're very happy that she decided to do a PhD with us. Prior to that, Dr. Liza was with RRG Bank and quite extensive experience in the banking sectors as well. Dr. Liza, thank you so much for joining us. Let me ask you these questions. Let me go straight to the point, talking about your current experience heading strategy at Maybank Islamic. So sustainability agenda seems to be resonating well with the vision of Maybank Islamic. And I'm sure you are personally involved in many of these initiatives as well. So do you mind sharing with us some of the initiatives that Maybank Islamic has taken recently? And how do you think that, you know, this should be a benchmark or consider as a practices for other financial institutions as well? And why do you think that this idea of sustainability, you know, is important, not just for big banks, but also generally for all financial institutions? Dr. Liza, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Is. Assalamu alaikum. It is a privilege to be on this panel with Tan Sri and Prof. AAhad, and it's great to be with everyone here. So I'd like to start by saying conversations on sustainability has been building for some years now. But at Maybank, we started as publishing our sustainability report from 10 years ago. Under the guidance of Tan Sri Wahid, our core values, our core objective of humanizing financial principles has always been our North Star. Now, when Bank Negara announced their value-based intermediation guidelines, in which they'd like us to think about the impact we're creating on the environment as well as community. At Maybank Islamic, we thought a lot of our initiatives are already very much aligned with the framework. The core idea is to move from thinking about the community just as a philanthropic contribution model through CSR, but shifting the model and thinking to embed the needs of the community in our business and in designing our products. So this can be seen in one of the earliest products that we did in this area called the House Key, our rent to own home ownership program. We saw that a large part of the younger generation had difficulties with down payment and needed to own a home. So the product was designed to provide that flexibility. I'll just mention one other product. We launched Malaysia's very first social impact deposit campaign last month. For every placement made on our Islamic fixed deposit product, we will contribute a portion of it to a fund providing financial relief to those whose incomes have been affected during the pandemic. Now, the conclusion is this, that we have moved away with the traditional method of product design without thinking of society's current and emerging needs. And we see this very much being very important, especially this year. We also need to think about the consequences of the human action to the environment, to healthcare, the very actions that will threaten our livelihood and also our safety. And so we at Maybank, I think we need to really understand what's our role in ensuring that we continue to be community builders, and whether we are making the problem worse or being part of the solution. So these are the core thinking that we're starting to, I suppose we've been thinking about it, but we're deepening the thoughts around these areas. And I'd like to touch on the second part of your question: what can Islamic institutions do to promote the sustainability agenda? What can Islamic institutions do? So I think we can create an awareness on the Shariah's guidance on sustainability. There are a lot of literature on sustainability from the conventional and Western countries, but what we find is those are very much focused on the E aspect on environment, whereas within the ASEAN context, the social impact, the S of the ESG, is very much a core issue or something that we need to think about a lot more. And so whether we're doing or putting enough thought to social justice, whether we're thinking about income inequality and what's our role in these big issues in society. So that's very much what we're looking at when we think about sustainability. But I'll just end on this final note as well, that I agree with what Tan Sri said. It is very much going to be very central. It is going to be in how we think about products and also about strategy and our core values and purpose within society. The traditional method of thinking about the bottom line and all that it's not sustainable, as we know. And the thinking should be, what are the problems that we can solve and what's our role in solving those issues.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Liza. But before I let you go, I just want to ask a follow-up questions. It seems that these notions that it's very difficult to find a balance between profits and people and planets. And this is only can be done by big players because they have the resources, they can establish a unit and they can do the ESG reporting, so on and so forth. So to what extent this notion is true, Dr. Liza? I mean, do you think this is true? It's difficult for smaller firms to embrace this agenda, or so what is your thought on this?
So we're seeing in sustainability that with a lot of new technologies, especially coming out of India and surprisingly from Vietnam, that the cost to do sustainability is coming down. A lot of the renewable energy is going to be comparable very, very closely in the next coming years. The issue of whether there's a huge cost to it, I think with research and development, we see that already becoming to be solved. The issue is going to be solved. The second is linking this notion with Islamic finance. Now, a lot of the things that we learn in Islamic finance is counterintuitive to what we've been told from very, very young, in that to get more money, the Islamic values would teach us to give more, whereas the conventional approach would say to invest or save more. So this is our role in it, to think about what is the Islamic principles and guidance in this, and that the profit and people element is very much linked to our role and duty in Islamic finance and the Sharia. And this is what we need to always think about and go back to, because the blessings and the justifications of all that all come into play when we think about profit and our role in society.
Thank you so much, Dr. Liza. Now, Tan Sri, we have to go back to you. So I hope you are ready for the second round of questions. Now, probably, Tan Sri, you probably have to wear the hat of a former minister and also policymakers as well. And also now you are involved so much with academic institutions, and I'm sure your perspective of certain matters might have changed, from corporate world toward policy and now towards a much broader space, education, academia, so on and so forth. So Tan Sri, when we talk about charting a new reality, okay, and the common understanding is always that, we have to address some of the fundamental issues, structural issues, and we need to basically overcome some of the serious problems that we have, in fact, in Malaysia, to bring this country or to propel this country to a different level. So that when we talk about sustainable and inclusive, it's not just a slogan, but it's actually a policy that implementable, and initiative can be taken so that people's life can actually get better. And I'm sure, Tan Sri, you're well aware that especially during this pandemic, the B40 or even to a certain extent the M40 are actually going through a serious hardship as well. So Tan Sri, as a nation, you say we have to come together. Okay, you give us what should be done at the macro and also micro level. You talk about embracing a certain principle. So maybe Tan Sri, as a former policymakers, and also now in education industry space as well. So what is your aspiration, Tan Sri? Maybe you can give some evidence, Tan Sri. What can be done? What this country needs to move forward? Or basically in a nutshell, what should be done to achieve shared prosperity 2030? Because we missed Wawasan 2020. So we don't want to miss another one, Tan Sri. So feel free, Tan Sri.
Well, thank you, Dr. Eskandar. I must say that I had the benefit of being in government, and I was involved in the formulation of the 11th Malaysia Plan. As you know, these are the plans that we prepare every 5 years. And in the case of the 11th Malaysia Plan, the theme was anchoring growth on people. And inside that, we outlined clearly what, not just the policies, but the action plans that needed to be undertaken. So I guess naturally, like any plans, the challenge would be in how do you execute it effectively. So naturally, there will be some challenges and so on. So I hope that in the main, we're able to actually implement those that we put under the 11th Malaysia Plan. And as we move into 2020 now, the Economic Planning Unit now is overseen by Dr. Sri Mustafa Mohamed, is working on the 12th Malaysia Plan. And And again, this will go all the way up to 2025. Now, my understanding in my discussions with the minister is that it will be driven again by the shared prosperity vision, and it will provide clarity in terms of which are the areas that needed to be executed. Now, obviously, we're not privy to what's being worked on by EPU, but if I would hope that it will include, among others, 5 areas which I hope the government will focus on, among others. I think firstly, on the need to uplift education standards and relevance. So I think we've learned from this COVID-19 experience how education will play an important part as we move forward. I think they'll probably need to compress and making use of more online learnings and creating courses to be shorter and so on. And they enhancing the industry application to make sure that whatever students and graduates that we produce will be industry ready for those who are pursuing employment, and for those who are not, we would also like to create more entrepreneurs, especially in the tech space as well. Secondly, on the need to embrace digital economy and digital government. We are fortunate because we are in that era already, and a lot of services can be done digitally. So I used to argue, why is it that when our children they turn the age of 6, we have to start to register them in the school. But because we already have my kid at birth, basically we know which baby is born in which year to whose parents, and then where do they live and which school and when will they get into standard 1 and so on. And all this can be used to plan better with all this big data available in terms of when do we build more schools, when do we hire more teachers, or when do we compress them if we see that there's a trend of migration out of certain areas and so on. And likewise, I always argue that why do we need to register to vote? Because you know that automatically when one person will turn 18 now to be eligible to vote, where do they live and so on. So that can be the default constituency where they vote. But should they want to vote in their permanent address, then they can actually offer another address. So again, that can be done. So I do hope that all this will be embraced as we move forward. The third is in terms of addressing the appropriate labor policy, particularly regarding minimum wage, foreign labor policy, expats hire, for example. So I always feel that our people, the wage level is still very low, even compared to some of our neighbors. Of course, our cost of living is actually low as well compared to many other countries. But the point is actually there's a need to actually push our minimum wage so that all the value-added jobs can be for our people. So that if we have the appropriate policy, we don't need so many foreign laborers to work in the various industries that we have. Likewise, in the case of expats hire, I think if we can allow some of our multinationals to recruit, say, 5% or workforce, so that can create a conducive environment where we have many foreign students who graduate from our universities, they can actually work here, and that will create a multinational environment in our Malaysian companies where the 90% or 95% of Malaysians who work in that organization will benefit from being exposed to these foreign talents as well. The fourth is in terms of addressing efficiency and security in food production and distribution. I think this is actually key. We've seen how we had some initial difficulties at the onset of the COVID-19, but I think the time has come for us to make sure that this is actually taken care of well for our own security, if you like. And number 5 would be in terms of embedding sustainability in everything that we do. either at the government level or at the corporate level, at society level, and as well as at the individual level. And I think even at the individual level, I must say that, again, we all have to do our respective part beyond not using plastics. Even the waste, household waste segregation, I think majority of nations are still not doing that. And I think once you do all these things in our daily life, we will contribute towards a better environment, a better country, which will then be more prosperous and also more equitable, if you like. So let me perhaps stop here first. Thank you.
Thank you, Tan Sri. I think that really can become a basis of policy formulations for the future of Malaysia as well. You really have identified the key issues. If I can just sum up, you're talking about educations, you're talking about digitalizations, you're talking about the wage structures as well, you're talking about the food security, and last but not least is also the responsibility of individuals as well. So that's actually sum up quite a number of pertinent matters when you're talking about pushing forward the sustainability agenda. So we'll get back to you, Tan Sri. I'm sure there are plenty of people who actually wants to ask you questions, and in fact looking forward for your lectures at INCEIF too. Because this conversation might not end in 30 minutes or 1 hour. I think there are plenty of things to talk about every time we talk about policy matters. Prof. AAhad, now let me move to you, Prof. So Tan Sri already said the arguments, that education's not just in terms of accessibility, but people are also talking about the new reality of education. There are a lot of expectations now from the graduates. Those days it's just about having a piece of papers, saying that you are a degree holder or your master's degree holder. But today people are talking about outcome-based education. People are talking about, relevant skill. People are talking about digital skill. People are talking about emotional skill. People are talking about soft skill. So Prof, how do we prepare this kind of graduate, and how do you think that, and we cannot deny the fact that these people are very so important, for the human nation building, so on and so forth. But what are the ingredients here? What are the recipe here, Prof? So as a professor, now I'm asking you to wear the hat of Professor of Leadership and Human Resource. What are the ingredients here, Prof? Maybe you can share with the audience, how do we build, the relevant skill for us to embrace this new future that we are talking about?
Well, as Tan Sri mentioned quite rightly, and as also I highlighted earlier, that today's graduates, today's MBA professionals will require a new set of skills and competencies, right? And some of the competencies have been mentioned, but there are some more competencies that are needed, expected from the MBA student. They should have an analytical mindset. They should be very good team player in different contexts, in different multidimensional settings, working with people with diverse backgrounds, age, gender, ethnicity, nationality, religious background, from different professional backgrounds. And one of the major areas is their technology orientation, the willingness to learn new technologies, sharpening their technological skills, the flexibility and change management mindset. Not many students have it, unfortunately. When we try to develop new strategies, new policies, there is a need for changing the organizational culture, organizational structure. Working in that kind of change environment and the change mindset is very, very important. That's what we have courses like organizational development and change management, how to develop those skills and competencies. There are a lot of research done on that. The issue of creative destruction, for example, when it's needed, when some of the knowledge becomes less relevant compared to the new knowledge that is coming in. So we have the concept of learning, unlearning, and relearning concept that been floating around. The new concept of co-opetition. Co-opetition is a simultaneous interaction of collaboration and competition. So at one side, we compete with each other in the industry, the different companies. On the other side, we have to collaborate among this. Those skills, like for example, in US, they call going across the line. So, but those are the issues that our MBA students need to possess right now. Now, to develop those competencies, the traditional MBA course delivery method has to be adjusted. And we have been talking about for a long time when I was running this MBA program in UIA for a long time. And one of the requirements I asked all of my lecturers is that in each lecture, in each course, you should have at least one guest speaker. Sometimes you have more guest speakers. Sometimes you be a panel of industry speakers from various backgrounds so that they can open up their minds, share their experience with the MBA students on application of knowledge at different industry settings. These are the issues that we need that to train the students to develop this, human resource capability of delivering the programs in many different ways that we have seen that is happening in other competing or reputed business schools. It's not only case study. MBA courses in everywhere, the case study method is becoming more and more popular, obviously. But when we talk about the interaction of industry-based education, that means, are we giving industry-based projects for the students to spend time over there and develop some like consultancy type of projects as a part of the program? And like, for example, in our course, we have the student has to spend at least few weeks to the industry on that course and see what is the industry problem they have, and they have to develop a consulting proposal, working like a professional consultant. That means they have to immerse themselves in the industry education. Then we have the other thing that right now I'm doing in one of the courses, dialogue session between these two groups. So each group is studying one situation, and they have to come together and they have to debate and dialogue on their unique position, and the rest of the students will be giving input so that at the end they learn from that. One of the major things that we see among MBA students, which is lacking, is effective communication skills. Can they communicate effectively at different contexts, different situations, with different people? And many times when they make the presentation in cases or a report presentation or other project presentation, then we see they make a presentation, there's Q&A, that's it. But now what we are doing, we have done in Singapore a long time, that we video record their presentation and we upload in the website portal, and they review themselves their presentation, and they see others to critique their presentation. And then next time they do the presentation, we have seen their presentation skill has improved significantly. So those are the different ways that we can develop those skills. One of the other things that we see, which should be different than other educational programs, the MBA classes should be much, much more interactive. That means if the students do not make comment or interact in the class, they should not be given proper credit compared to those who are interacting. So the lecturer or the professor who is guiding the program or guiding the course has to encourage that one, or professional interaction. It has various benefits. One is communication skill, the other is sharing the industry experience and bringing up the new knowledge that from the observation. Nowadays, with the IT and online program, we have the discussion board that, like, for example, in my current course I'm doing. So people upload something, some issues, and everybody is interacting with them. Q&A on the platform, online programs. And the lecturers go there, interject sometimes. Okay, what did you see that? What is the issue there? And also share his knowledge. So these are the issues that we need to develop these competency, which are industry-driven, real-life oriented, as well as the students' communication capabilities improvement skills should be updated from that standpoint. But see, the industry's expectation is changing as well. That's what we see in the media. They are so much critical of MBA education. Now, what is the latest trend in MBA education right now? I was trying to look at different reputed MBA programs, how they're adjusting. First of all, in MBA, curriculum development, change of curriculum should be frequent, and it has to have industry input as much as possible. So we cannot have one curriculum that you have designed for one course, it will be running for 3 to 5 years. I think 1 year, at most 2 years. I understand change of curriculum leads a lot of change of the issues that cost involved, but it has to have continuous changes in curriculum, contents, as well as issues that will be done from the people. The other thing that we talked about is sustainability issue of exposing the students and providing the sustainability improvement, whether it is organization citizenship behavior or corporate social responsibility, or ethical spiritual perspective, or cross-cultural, cross-national perspective. Those are the things that can be integrated in the curriculum to develop those things. Now, see, especially in US, I have seen there is a trend right now to offer STEM specializing, STEM MBA, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics oriented MBA, because there's a demand from the industry on that one to deal with the technology. So to what extent? Now, this STEM concept is a very debatable concept because people look at STEM from different perspectives. To what extent you're giving emphasis on which area? These are the things that I think we need to consider when we design the MBA program, we offer the MBA program, we develop the competencies of our future graduates so that the MBA graduate should be distinctly different than other business graduate that are going to the market. That we have to see.
Thank you, Prof.
Let me stop here, and if you have other.
Sure. Thank you, Prof. I think indirectly by answering my questions, you also were able to give a glimpse or a snapshot of what students might experience at INCEIF too. So now since we are talking about experience, so there's no better person to talk about her own experience at INCEIF. I think it wasn't an easy journey, I guess, Dr. Liza, about 4 years of PhD. In fact, I remember that you have to take a leave from your work to complete your PhD, so we can understand how challenging it is. And I'm sure it's not just about getting a paper, a PhD. I'm sure the experience that you have had at INCEIF have pretty much, set the direction of your career post-PhD. So Dr. Liza is the right person to talk about experience at INCEIF. So how do you think that your experience and the journey that you had have shaped your perspective? And maybe you can share a few tips for potential students of the current students, what they can actually do and take away from the experience that they will encounter at INCEIF. Dr. Liza, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Is. Yes, it was the second part of the PhD that I actually resigned from Al-Raji, but throughout the first part and also throughout the entire Chartered Islamic Finance program, I did it whilst I was working at that time at Pricewaterhouse. And the demands of work and the demands of studying was equally both challenging. But I found that with balance and with dividing time, that always tends to be a good answer to solving and ensuring that you meet both deadlines equally with rigor and ensure that you don't slack off from one. The other thing that I'd like to, I suppose, mention as a core learning is I thought the learning ended when I received my scroll, but it never stopped. In fact, it was much after that I went on to, I was very lucky to work with Prof. Abbas to publish 2 books with him after INCEIF. And then I went on to do postdoctoral research work as well. And so it's this thinking that the learning stops, but the journey doesn't end. And it is always to think about what kind of new ideas can we bring to the table, can we put in and contribute to the existing literature out there? What kinds of methods and what we learned from the core principles of Islamic finance, looking at Islamic social finance, for example, and bringing it through the forefront of solving some of the needs of society right now. We know that income inequality is a core issue as well as wealth inequality. And Islamic principles, there's no shortage in terms of how we can solve those issues in terms of the wealth distribution and the wealth redistribution teachings from the Quran. And so there are many ideas that we can draw on. And what I would like to advise as well is that I think it is mainly the industry expertise that INCEIF has to offer that I felt very privileged to receive. So I'm quite envious. At my time, we didn't have Tanshi Wahid teaching us. And so I was wondering if you'd have me back for some of your classes. But the point here is that those industry experiences from the experts were very, I suppose, very valuable. It equipped me with what I needed to know when I started working. And INCEIF was one of the very first pioneers in Islamic finance at a time when it was being thought of. So I can't think of another well-fitting body to link Islamic finance and sustainability because they are very much aligned. And whilst other universities will think about sustainability just as an add-on to their program, I see that INCEIF has this opportunity to link it within Islamic finance principles and to think about sustainability as a more complete and comprehensive learning structure for the students. What I really also was quite privileged to get was the learnings with students. And so a lot of, I saw your students coming into this program are also from industry. And I find it's something that I've been very, very blessed with. All of the students that I started my program with were very close to this day, because we then come out to the industry and we are in different institutions. And so we always keep in touch and collaborate. This is very key, because the main duty and purpose of us being here is actually to pursue knowledge and to continue pursuing this knowledge and seeing what we can do to make community better.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Liza. That's well said, actually. That sum up quite a number of things. Experience, post-INCEIF, pre-INCEIF, and what the students aspire to achieve. So now we finished round 1 and round 2. So I like to bring Effie back into these panel discussions. Effie, do you mind joining me?
Yes.
All right, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Effie.
No problem.
Okay, so a lot of questions are coming in.
Yes, actually, I'd like to invite our MBA first cohort to ask questions. We've got Mr. Muiz from Malaysia, we've got Mr. Haider from USA, and Mr. Firmansyah from Indonesia. Each one have questions, they're very eager. So perhaps we can have Mr. Muiz first with your question, Mr. Muiz.
All right, Assalamualaikum and good evening, everyone. So my name is Abdul Muiz, first cohort MBA Sustainable Business. First of all, I would like to thank INCEIF and the panels for a fruitful sharing sessions. I have one question for Tan Sri Wahid. Tan Sri, there is proposal from some quarter for the government to consider implementing withholding tax to the glove manufacturer in Malaysia in view of the supernormal profit recorded in light of the increase in demand pursuant to the outbreak of COVID-19. If government were to consider this in the future, would it be sustainable to the investing environment in the glove industry in terms of setting up of new business and attractiveness of the industry as a whole to the local and foreign investors? Thank you.
Wow, okay.
You probably have to be subtle in your answer, Tan Sri.
well, I think I thought the minister has already answered that question. But I think in general, windfall tax has been actually imposed to some industries in the past, including the palm oil industry. But I think learning from past experience, I think the government will always have to take a cautious approach in introducing new windfall tax, because the fear is that number one, at what level would it be seen as windfall? And then secondly, okay, after this industry, who's next? So I think the idea would be to avoid creating uncertainty from an investment policy perspective. So if you create uncertainty, then your potential foreign investors or even domestic direct investors will tend to look at other markets where the investment policies and the tax environment or tax regime will be more stable. So I think it's more of not wanting to send the wrong signal to the market. Plus, I think at the end of the day, being responsible corporate citizens, I would expect those corporates who are making record profits would share their profits with the various stakeholders. So, of course, the more profit you make, you're really paying more profit in terms of, although the tax rate will be the same, but you should actually give more dividends to your shareholders. You should share more with your employees, and do other programs with your community. So in the case of the glove making companies, I understand they've already pledged that commitment of 400 million ringgit for COVID-19 and so on. So I guess that'll probably be the kind of approach being taken by the government now. I can't speak for the government, but I can understand why they have decided not to impose windfall tax.
Thank you, Tan Sri. So the second question is coming from the gentleman from USA, Mr. Haider from the Silicon Valley. Mr. Haider, are you ready with your question? You will have to unmute your mic, please.
Hello, everyone. So can you hear me?
Very clearly, thank you.
Okay. My name is Haider Sayed. I'm MBA student, as he said. This pandemic has given birth to a renewed focus by entrepreneurs worldwide to think really deeply about sustainability, specifically for me, as a student at INCEIF, this university sits very uniquely as the ideal institute to pursue sustainability and unique blend with business and Islamic teachings, especially from an outside perspective here in the US. What kinds of programs either banks, governments, organizations have to support entrepreneurs who want to open up businesses and set up shop, specifically businesses that are focused on sustainability in the city of Kuala Lumpur?
That's
okay. Dr. Eskandar, perhaps you want to try this, or you can get Prof. Ahad as well to chip in.
Yeah, maybe Dr. Liza, do you mind?
Dr. Liza, yeah.
Yeah, sure. I'll be happy to take this question.
Yeah.
Now, there are a number of initiatives being done at the government level. We know that there is a body looking just specifically for social impact entrepreneurs, and it's a government-linked institution called MAGIC. And so those that are that can demonstrate that they are doing a very good social impact to communities, they can register, and they are given the capacity building programs as well as several grants as well. And so on the national level, there are certain programs as well, but banks generally on their own, we do have our own programs specific for SMEs, and these still continue, but it's very much trying to see what kind of capacity building programs that these companies would need. Now, very much it is mainly what we see is the understanding financial literacy is what they would need, but also it is on grants and funding at the early stages of their business. And so there are a number of models that we're looking at to see how we can make that grow even further.
Thanks, Doc.
Thank you, Dr. Liza. So the next question is from Mr. Firman Shah. Mr. Firman Shah, if you are ready.
Yes. Assalamualaikum. Yeah, Assalamualaikum to dear fellows panelists and also all the members of the House. Firman Shah, from Indonesia, currently working in CIMB Islamic Indonesia. So I would like to address my question to Dr. Liza, I guess, because we are in the same industry, Islamic banking. So Dr. Liza, as you mentioned just now, that actually in the ASEAN perspective, for the ESG integration, we have to put more S than the Western perspective, which is the E, the environment. But in fact, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore are in the midst of developing green taxonomy, which is adopting from the European and World Bank. But in the meantime, before that kind of taxonomy is going to be developed by our central bank, so do you have any kinds of insights how to instill and inculcate that as the social? Because I think the social inclusion is the heart of the Asian, especially Southeast Asia. Like you mentioned, like in Maybank, you have a social deposit campaign. Meanwhile, in CIMB Indonesia, we have a Wakaf saving program that actually helping for the underprivileged society. So maybe you have some recommendation for the policymakers in the ASEAN organization. Thank you, Dr. Liza.
Sure, thank you so much. And so the taxonomy by Bank Negara is still very much being discussed. And it came out later than Bank Negara's value-based intermediary guidelines. Now, value-based intermediary guidelines has that as considerations very much inbuilt in it. And I know that there is a special workforce called the Joint Task Force on Climate Change at Banegara that actually sees the linkage between those two and how they can harmonize the teachings of the VBI requirements as well as the taxonomy. And so they do tend to complement each other, but you're right, it's very much thinking, it's not as easy as just saying no to palm oil, but there's also the labor and the human and the social aspects we need to be very, very, very off.
Effie, perhaps one last question.
Okay, this question I believe is coming from either the social media or the chat box from Mr. Azam Jalil, and it's dedicated to Tan Sri Wahid. It seems that people as influenced as you fully aware about big data importance. Why organizations and Malaysia are not fully adopting the big data as the reference and indicator in improving efficiency in decision making? Tan Sri?
Tan Sri, we cannot hear you, Tan Sri.
Okay, sorry, I just unmuted.
Okay, okay, now we're good.
Yeah, so I think all businesses want to use big data for sure, but I think it's at this moment it's a matter of having access to big data and having that know-how and being able to do it in a cost-effective manner too. But I'm referring to the traditional businesses, but in the case of telcos, those who are in the service industry, banks and so on, they're already doing and using big data very extensively, I must say. So I guess it's actually more of the other companies, I guess it's level of maturity, affordability as well. And I think with this COVID-19, most of them have already started the journey. It's just a matter of time. Soon, I think all businesses will have no choice but to embrace big data and artificial intelligence for sure.
Thank you very much. Yep. So I think in the essence of time, we do have a few questions coming in through from social media, from our chat bots, but I think we've come to the end of the session. It was very, very fruitful, and I think a lot of people were really, really eager to participate. And I think this is the kind of environment that I think, Tan Sri, you can expect, and also Prof. Ahad, you can expect from your classes once you begin with this cohort and the next cohort in January and so on and so forth. Now, again, I'd like to thank everyone for your participation. Perhaps some last words from Dr. Eskandar.
I mean, this is just, I would probably say, the teaser of conversation that we're going to have at INCEIF, like what Tan Sri have said and what Prof have said, and also seconded by Dr. Liza as well. What INCEIF is trying to achieve here is that we are trying to go beyond the basic tenets of Islamic finance, and we are trying to bring in the elements of sustainability, and I think this will even become even more relevant post-pandemic. Okay, so we can clearly see that how important this topic is. Our panelists have highlighted that. And these are the same people that you're probably going to see in the classroom as well. So for those who are excited about this and wants to join the conversation, wants to be part, I would probably say this revolution of setting a new or charting a new reality. So please, explore more about not just about this program, but all the offering that INCEIF has. So with that, Effie, I would like to thank again Tan Sri. Again, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Initially we started at 2:45. Now it's already 4:15. So actually we had 1.5 hours conversation and we didn't even feel it. So Tan Sri, again, thank you so much. Prof. Ahad, always a good friend as well. We always discuss at INCEIF. And Dr. Liza, it's always pleasure to have you. You always been supportive to INCEIF all the time. So again, Effie, back to you.
All right, thank you very much again. Just a short marketing message here. We actually have a virtual open day happening online tomorrow. So if you are, any of you guys watching right now and are interested to find out more, you just have to log on to any of our social media platforms that shares the link to RSVP, and we'll see you there tomorrow. Our next intake is still open for the Malaysian locals because the international intake deadline has passed. So for those of you who are out there looking forward to start your learning with INCEIF, January is the next intake. And with that, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum. Stay safe, everyone. Thank you.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thanks everyone.
Salam.
Assalamualaikum.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Waalaikumsalam.
You didn't take a group picture. Dah ambil lah.